Well, hi everybody again. Welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is where we discuss all types of things paranormal, often with a slant on predictions and things like that. But today I'm going to talk about, do we live in a simulation, something like the movie The Matrix? What is our take on reality? So I'm going to share some of my ideas with you about this and take your questions later in the show. So thank you for joining me for Coffee with Craig. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. As you know, I tend to go live randomly and sporadically whenever I feel like it. And so thanks for those of you that are gradually joining me now into the live chat. And we're beginning to be talking today about, is life a simulation? Is it like it is in the movie? You know, I want to question some of the ideas about what is reality. So those of you that are joining for this live chat with this, so make sure those of you who haven't come in late, make sure you follow the channel and you'll be able to come and join me for these live chats. Have some questions ready about the nature of reality from what I have to say today. And we'll try to keep on topic if we can, please. So, it's a big topic, of course. There's quite a lot of thought that people believe that this whole world that we live in is a sort of a simulation. We're beginning to question the whole idea of what is reality. And we've been given this model by science that the external world is all real and things like that, and that everything can be measured and everything is basically, what I suppose was originally Newtonian physics. It was all kind of laid out for us, and we thought we knew everything. We thought we had it all sussed out. We planned the whole thing, and along comes quantum physics and things, and now we find there's kind of holes in our reality, and we begin to wonder: is this some form of counterfeit reality? Is what we're seeing and experience actually what we think it is? And we start watching films like The Matrix and things, and it makes us think about things. Now, I remember. Now, a long time ago, when I was a teenager, I had a dream, and it really quite shook me. And I don't know if others have had dreams like this. If you have, put a comment later on in the comments below. But I had a dream, and it was kind of a bit like an abduction dream, like an alien abduction dream. Now, I don't believe I've been abducted by aliens, although I might look like one sometimes. But I had this dream of like aliens or terrorists or something. There was something had taken me, right? And this really, really powerful, vivid dream. And it was a bit like the modern day experiment dreams, and so they were doing something to me. Right now, it wasn't an alien dream. I don't think it was, because it looked to me in the dream like terrorists or something. But the dream was terribly frightening. And I woke up from that dream in absolute shock, absolute shaking and sweating. And I got out of bed and I walked over and I poured, because I was in a small room at the time, and I walked across and poured myself a glass of water and had a drink. And then I woke up again. I'd woken up in the dream. I hadn't actually woken up, and I was in bed. And I thought, my God, I've just woken up a second time. And I got up and walked over and had a glass of water. It was a bit like, the movie Groundhog Day. And yet I hadn't really read anything or thought of anything at that time as a teenager. And there wasn't all the stuff like Matrix on the movies and things like we got now. And so for me, if I've explained that well, it's a bit difficult to explain it, but it was like I woke up from the dream I had this dream, and it was a horrifying dream. I woke up, and I woke up a second time, and it was so vivid to me. It was so vivid. I was sat there kind of shaking, thinking, am I going to wake up again? Am I asleep or am I awake? And some of you might have had similar experiences. And for me, that was the start of questioning, what is the nature of my reality? I mean, maybe I've woken up from a dream and it's all completely, I'm in a new reality altogether. And maybe I questioned, every time we go to sleep and we enter deep sleep, do we reset everything and come out in a new sort of reality every time? You know, does it kind of start all of that? I even questioned the idea, is this a continual replay of something, a bit like Groundhog Day? I hadn't seen that movie. I don't think it even come out then, because it's a long while ago. Yeah, it wouldn't have come out even then. So some of us often question this now. And I know obviously lots of people have these strange dreams and feelings about that everything's not quite what you think it is. It's not quite as it seems, you know. Now there's quite a lot of interesting videos out there nowadays about this on YouTube, but one of the first people that first started to think about these things was the science fiction writer Philip K. Dick, who he addressed a lot of these ideas, and we get the movie, for example, Total Recall, was questioned this whole idea about what is reality. Because in Total Recall, he goes into the machine, and clearly something had happened before. He'd probably already been in the machine once before, and his reality was being changed in Total Recall. It poses so many fascinating questions. It was, I think the original title of the book was something like, we can remember it for you wholesale. That was it. It was a short story by him, and they built the whole story out of it. And of course, then other sci-fi movies came out of it as well. I love sci-fi. Jane won't let me watch sci-fi, but I love it. The other films inspired were such as Minority Report, where the precogs could see the future. He questioned about the nature of the future. Or Blade Runner, questioned about humanity, really, I suppose, in that one. And my favorite, Through a Scanner Darkly, which wasn't a brilliant film, but fabulous book. Anyway, these ideas and the ideas of the Matrix as well even go back further, right back to allegories that were written by Plato. He wrote an allegory of the cave. I won't go into all the details of this now, but go and look it up. That was an interesting. And even Socrates, it could be based, they say, on Socrates' visit to the Oracle of Delphi, where he goes to the Oracle of Delphi that used to tell the future. So all these things have kind of come much more to the fore in the modern age nowadays, because we have YouTube, we have social media in which we're all talking about these things, and they were kind of the right sort of stuff for the early BBC and the rest of it that we had to watch. Philip K. Dick also believed that when we get the experience of deja vu, for example, that this is because he believed it was all a kind of, the world was all a simulation, but he believed that deja vu was when the new code was being introduced into the whole idea of the Matrix, you know. So, you know, Philip K. Dick was offered some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, he used to get very high on hallucinogenics and things to get his ideas, you know. But he did have some very groundbreaking thoughts and way ahead of his time. But also, I mean, just digressing a moment here. So when I use the I Ching Oracle, because, you know, I work a lot with the I Ching, that's all based upon telling the future using yin and yang, which is basically a binary system. And behind the I Ching, which I'll do some videos about this later on, actually, is this whole idea of binary mathematics. You know, where did these ancient Chinese get this idea of binary mathematics, which of course is the basis of how computers work. So when we look at this idea too, there's this other thoughts that are worth talking about, which is the Mandela effect. Now, I've done a whole video on this some time ago, but you know, if we are in a matrix, the idea is when we must be able to test it somehow. How can we test if it's a matrix. You know, I remember reading a great book. I don't know who wrote it now. It was called Counterfeit Reality, in which everybody was in a kind of a matrix type of world. And they kept finding holes in it. They kept coming to blank spaces, you know, blank spots, you know. And they worked out in this particular story, which I thought was brilliant, where everybody was actually, they didn't even exist. We were all actual computer simulations, computer programs that had become conscious, that were purely there for marketing reasons, to test what people would do in certain cases to make them buy certain products, which I thought was brilliant fantasy. I'm going off. But come back to this idea of the Mandela effect. Now, this is like a kind of, I think it was, what was her name? Fiona Broome. Fiona Broome came up with this idea. She was a kind of a paranormal researcher. And she noticed that a lot of people had false memories of the past, but not just one or two people. Whole swathes of people thought something had happened that didn't. And it seemed logical to start questioning this. For example, during, I think it would have been the 1980s, wasn't it? Mandela was held in prison in South Africa, which we know the story of. But many people distinctly remember him dying in prison, and also the funeral being covered on all the media. In fact, when that first came up, I thought, yeah, I kind of remember that. Do I? Do I remember that? You know, you have to question your memory. I mean, human memory is fallible. Mine particularly is fallible. But did that happen? Did he die? Or was there suddenly another Nelson Mandela? I mean, there's many instances of this. I mean, you can find sites where they list all these strange things that we thought were the case that weren't. The one that really stuck with me was the Monopoly Man image. You know, the man with the top hat on the Monopoly. I remember him as a child having a monocle. I'm sure he had a monocle, but no, he didn't. He didn't. It was. He doesn't have a monocle, and many other people seem to say, I'm sure he had a monocle. You know, there was another figure. I think it was one of the cigarette packets that used to have a man that looked very similar with a monocle. But perhaps we were confusing it with something. But you know, is there some anomaly? Is there something strange about the past? You know, is there something odd about the way things have been? Are there some holes in our reality? You know, and also physics is now onto this idea too, of course, because when we've been, you know, when I was at school, it was all Newtonian physics, and you know, you basically learn all your basic physics things, and I got very interested in reading about quantum theory then, but now it's even gone even further. It's come into the popular science fields, I suppose, and quantum theory gives us a completely different model of reality. I mean, there's this very famous experiment of the double slit idea that a particle can go through two slits, and it can be in both places at the same time, and it can only be in one place when it's observed. It's a complicated thing to explain, but basically it defies the whole world of. It defies the laws of physics. It defies the laws of time. And some say, well, the only way this could work is if it was in a computer simulation of some sort that completely defied all these things. So, and others say that, you know, that the whole of existence is some simulation, and that within these simulations, they're thinking in terms of computer simulations now, but within these simulations are simulations within the simulations within the simulations. Let's build a simulation within our simulation. And then things get very complicated. And even the brain itself, when you think about it, is a simulation. Now, go to putting all that other stuff aside for a moment and all crazy ideas that it raises here. The brain itself is a simulation. I mean, I'm only getting, when I look at the world around me, I'm only getting a snapshot of what goes on. You know, anybody that's ever taking any mind expanding things will see that the world is a completely different place, completely different. When you take away that, what Aldous Huxley called the blinkers, you know, we see it through a little lens like this, and we only see a little bit. When you take that away, and pow, you see the whole lot, and you realize, crikey, you know, I'm only experiencing a tiny fraction of the possibilities of existence. And so our minds, and we have to have that so we can function. we have little snapshots. We're getting little like thumbnails of the world all the time, but we're not seeing the full 10 billion megabyte JPEG every time. We just little snapshots. That's how it's for the brain to function. It's for us to survive in this world. So even our brain is a simulation that's understanding and seeing the world in ways, and my simulation might be very different to yours. For example, I don't know what I describe red as red, but you might, your brain might see red as blue and blue as red, but we don't know the difference. It just happens to see it differently. You might see the whole world completely in a different way to me. I might see a world of color. Yours might be full of grayness, or mine might be full of grayness, and yours might be full of great color. Who knows? I can't see inside your head. You can't see inside my head. And this is all part of how we perceive reality. Our perception of reality is very different too. But here I am talking about a reality as if it's something outside of ourselves, But what if reality was different? We live today in what the Hindus call the Kali Yuga. And this is a time when the materialistic model of the world dominates. And we will see the world in material world. We'll see it as an external form. Science becomes powerful in these times. Materialistic thinking with its selfishness and greed and things like that. The external world is what's important. But there's other yugas, there's other periods in human history where they talk about the Satya Yuga, with a great age of truth and higher consciousness, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga. These other yugas, mankind not only perceived the world differently, but reality itself was different. These were the ages they talked about when people could levitate stones onto the top of great temples and things like this. I've talked about that recently. I won't digress, but I'd like to. And so this idea that the world itself is actually an illusion. Everything that's out there is written into the history of lots of philosophy, but keeping with the Indian philosophy, which I find particularly clear. It talks about the great illusion of what we call Maya, the illusion of Maya. And it means really in a way that a person's existence or self-centeredness, our self-centeredness and our determines the way we see the world. It stops us from seeing the truth. Things get in the way. They talk about, you read it in Buddhism too. You read it in even in Christianity, removing the veil from my eyes. Our eyes are veiled. Our perceptions are veiled. And what is that veil? That veil is our concept of the world. That veil is our rationality. That veil is our ego. That veil is what's stopping us seeing the truth, the reality, and not seeing the truth. It's not just seeing it, it's being it. This is the other thing that I think is important for this. So the techniques to get through this, to get to the truth, to get to what we call the realization, has to come through things like work upon ourselves, things like Dharma, they call it, the work of spiritual work that we do, the Dharma that ensures that we can understand what our self is, our Atman is, and how that Atman might reincarnate, and how that Atman might be one with this impossible to describe, ever present, forever omnipresent consciousness that we could call liberation or moksha or escape from the illusion, the nirvana, the sniffing out of ignorance, the Buddhist technique way would describe it. It's like beyond all things. And behind this reality, that's the true reality. That's the only reality. That's the one reality. That's the reality that is where we already are. That's the root of ourselves. That's our home. That's who we are, and all the rest of it is just a manifestation of consciousness. So that's why it appears like a matrix. The matrix is a good way of describing it, but it's not a load of people outside programming us like in the fantastic movie The Matrix. It's actually us that are creating the matrix. And when we start to look at this and we start getting closer to this idea that our root, that where we are, is in that sort of infinite consciousness, and we can get close to that. We are in it, but in our ignorance we get close to it. There's no close or far, but we're part of it. and we know that's us, then we start to see that the world is actually quite a fluid place. This is where this whole idea of abundance and manifestation can come in. We actually have much more control over our existence than we ever thought possible. For example, I mean, I have to take it to a personal level really here, because it's okay, I'm intellectualizing these things, but in my own life as a medium and a psychic, I mean, this is, I think, where these skills come in, that you actually start to see through the fabric of the illusion, and start to see that there can be other realms, other worlds. The most fascinating, that's, I think, although my life has been very much as a spiritualist medium, and that has been fascinating in its own right, that there can be other worlds, that there can be other levels of existence, that we can exist in a spirit world, and that the spirit people communicate with us and can communicate with us through our minds, and even physically communicate with us sometimes in all sorts of ways. I was also particularly, like I say, if you've read my books like Messages from the Universe, absolutely overwhelmed by the idea when I discovered the NAADIs, because they were talking to me about my life, and knew everything that happened. And these people were writing thousands of years ago. So those ancient rishis that wrote those leaves that I read completely transformed my thinking about things. How could they know this thing? How could somebody see through the fabric of time? How could somebody conquer time like that? And if they could, what does it mean for us? What does it mean that we're capable of doing? Can we conquer time? Can we see through time? Can we see far, far back in time? Can we see far, far future in time? Is time itself something completely illusionary? You know, and that this reality that we've created that depends on time, maybe this could just go pop, just like that. Maybe that's what happens at death. I mean, I was very inspired also, again, going back, one of the early books that I read that I loved, when I first started getting interested in spirituality, I read the works, I've read pretty much the whole collective works of Carl Gustav Jung, which is one hell of a lot of reading. But in particular, his book that he wrote at the end of his life, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, that he dictated, because he was ill most of the time. He talked about near-death experiences in there. He talked about, he expressed things he dare not express as a scientist. And one of the things I found interesting is he described a dream of himself, coming back to dreams again, because that dream at the beginning was very important to me, like I said. He saw himself meditating in a dream. He walked up to himself and saw himself in meditation. And he knew that if he woke himself up, that would be it. The whole nature of what he understood about himself, the whole nature of the world around him would change. It would pop, you know, it would be completely different, because reality is created in this world, I think, by us almost meditating it. We are kind of dreaming our world. So these are my ideas really about what I think is the nature of consciousness, because, you know, we're stuck in this illusion. We're stuck in this illusion that we think that we're the body. We're not. I can observe it. Therefore, I'm not the body, am I? I'm not. I'm not those books behind me, those wonderful books that have been written by me. I'm not those. I can observe it. So I can see it. Therefore, I'm not it. I'm not my body because I'm observing it. That's not me, you know. And even my thoughts, I'm not my thoughts actually, because they're out there. I can observe that I'm having a thought. Or I can observe that I'm having a feeling. I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, you know. And even actually when, as a medium, it gets even kind of more interesting, because even thoughts that come into my mind sometimes are not my own. And I think that doesn't just apply to me. I think that applies to all of us, actually. Now, we're really going off into bonkers territory here, some of you might think. But as a medium, what I have to do is observe thoughts in the plane of my consciousness, as it were. I can say, that's my thought. That's my thought. Hey, that's nothing to do with me. And so when I'm doing mediumship, pull that thought out and say, would you understand something about this, and you say something to the person that's sat in front of you. You say, oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, how did you know that? I pulled it out of that plane of consciousness. That's how I work anyway. And other mediums do it consciously like that, like I do, or unconsciously do the same thing. But that's how it works. We're pulling things that are not my thoughts. Something that thought has been put into my head, right? And I think all around us all the time, the real reality is our inner world. The real reality is this world of consciousness. The real reality is what's happening within us. Those are our conscious thoughts, and so forth. And similarly, I mean, the nature of this, I think everything is consciousness, because I'm describing there that fluid inner world that can perhaps move in all sorts of directions, and that's what we move into when we go into the next planes after death. But could this world itself not also be a manifestation of thought? A really great friend of mine died recently. I'm very sad, because he was, for all through our lives, we used to have this sort of discussion, and it kind of inspired me, because we used to say that the world around us is an agreement. All it is an agreement. And that this world is kind of a solidified consciousness that we've all agreed that cannot be changed. This is the world. This is the stage that we've all agreed that we're going to work in. And so this stage includes the world around us, our physical body, all the rules of science and so forth, and physics. All of that is our agreement. And it's just that we come to this agreement, and this is where we play out our parts as the actor upon the stage. And when we die, this agreement's no longer necessary. Pop, it disappears, just like Jung waking up from his meditation. And of course, it then also brings us to another thought. I've tried to throw in a lot in here, but these are kind of ideas. I don't think I can give all the answers. I can answer the questions. But could we not, if this is the nature of existence, could we not also, each of us individually and collectively, have the power to change reality? If we all focused our thoughts in our life, if we, as you think, so you become, is something that is, I think Buddha said it originally, but whoever it came from, is true, isn't it? If whatever you focus your attention on grows in strength. So anything in our life that we focus our attention on happens to us, doesn't it? I mean, you think of good things, you have a dream, and it might take a time for that thing to manifest in your life. But if your karma's good and not too much in the way, it can manifest in your life. Similarly, a person full of hateful, horrible thoughts through their life, you normally find that something comes back on them in a similar way. Hateful, horrible people often suffer in funny sort of ways. And it's as you sow, shall you reap. That is the rules of karma, for example. So, but also similarly, if it's all consciousness, and we have a certain power of the will, which is another whole question that we need to think about later on, perhaps. But if we can focus our attention, focus our will, can't we make things happen that are good? Bring good things into our life. This is the law of manifestation, and I think all the books have got it wrong out there that go on about you got to feel it and want it, and it's like greed. I want money. It's got to be the whole thing about this existence is that it's the power of consciousness. It's about us becoming awake. What we want is to manifest consciousness in our life, awakening, knowledge, freedom from those things. So there's my thoughts on it. Anyway, I'm going off far too long, I think, here. But one thought did come to mind. What if we were to collectively? I know sometimes these sort of programs, less people would watch this. Usually get a few thousand people watch this type of talk. But sometimes some of my videos here get 250,000 viewers and things like that, which is fabulous. But what if a huge number of us could get together and try to manifest something between us? How about everybody that's watching this, you visualize a green flag on the White House. Now, as far as I know, there's no country that has a pure green flag. I think Islam kind of has a bit of a thing with a green flag, but let's say a green flag on the White House. Okay, picture it. Okay, when you finish this video, just picture a green flag on the White House. Let's see. It might not work. Let's see if the power of our collective thinking makes something happen. Could we visualize a green flag on the White House and see if something comes up on the news? And please do inform me if anything does. We're doing this video on the 30th of January 2023. Let's see if something manifests now, or maybe some some point in the future, a green flag on the White House. That would be an unusual thing, a plain green flag on the White House. Okay, so imagine it, a green flag on the White House. Let's see what happens. Who knows? We might be able to influence this. All right, I'm going to take some of your questions now, guys. So I know you've been putting quite a lot of comments in. I can't scroll back right through them. So think now, if you're going to put a question in, a question. I quite like the word, if you put a capital Q and then your question, or just a comment, those are good as well. On topic, if you can. What do you think? What's your thoughts, guys, on this? Any thoughts you'd like to add? Okay, you'll be watching for the green flag. That would be good. Thanks, Kate. It'd be funny, wouldn't it? Let's have a few comments. Any thoughts? Come on. I know you've been, I know a lot of very thoughtful people come in this program. Oh, here we go. What's this one? I believe in DNA memory. I'm a druid follower, a gentle path. After I joined an order, I found out 6 generations of my grandfathers have been druids. I had no idea. So maybe I was guided, or maybe it was programmed in me to find that path. Whatever, it's interesting. And I think that, keeping to this topic, actually, maybe within all the things that happen to us in this life, there are certain programs. This is what we perhaps bring into our life. We could even describe it as a bit of software that we bring into our life. It's got to work itself out in the world. That would be interesting. People want to control it, of course. You know, people like Bill Gates, says Nico Avocado. Yes, people want to control the society, and certainly if there was any ability to control this sort of matrix sort of idea, I'm sure, you know, the bad guys would get in on it. Here we are. In India, Chennai specifically, we manifest rains through group meetings and singings and chants. I'm amazed to see it works in the crazy hot summer with no chance of rain. I've heard of that, actually. I've heard of that. Other people, and not just, there's in Polynesia, I believe some of the things happen with some of the ethnic people there, and they talk about being able to call the fish. The people will call the fish, will manifest the fishing, that they will call the fish, and particularly call the dolphins. What's that one you're saying there, Ginger Tea? Biden has already put a white flag up on the White House. Weak presence, restore Russia. Yeah. We're not talking about that. No. I see the humor. Okay. Let's grab a few more. What does the older spirits think about? How we live all far apart, not good for collective manifestation of world joy and forgiveness. And that's quite interesting too, Lottie, isn't it, actually? Because that upon what we focus our attention grows in strength. That is very much, I think, in our own lives. But collectively, you know, you think how the world is being driven by such dreadful values. You think of the power of television, for example, and the power of advertising. It's forcing us and pushing us more and more and more into materialistic thinking all the time. I mean, I was very happy when I went to India and I saw around the Indian airports, they had all quotes from the great Indian saints. And I thought, wow, that's good. Get people's consciousness on that type of thing. I think one day it will, Julie. I believe that one day the world will be a good place. It will be a golden age. It will be a time when people of good character run the world, you know, and that is on its way. And I think it will be in our lifetimes. But it has to come when we got to break. More of us have got to break through the illusion and not just sort of watch YouTubes and sort of say, oh, yeah. Craig's great. He's right. You know, we've got to do it in our lives. We've got to become awake people. And I think when more and more people wake up, that's when we really start to see the world change. And that becomes a power. You get more people behind it, more people waking up, and all sorts of things can happen. I think we're all being tested now, especially in splitting into different timelines very soon. I don't know if we can. I don't know about the timelines. This is another thought, isn't it? That you can jump to a different sort of level of illusion. You know, so maybe there's timelines too. Maybe there's multiple realities. and that we move ourselves into a different reality. But and if we were able to have control over the reality, why have illness, suffering, and disease, and death, and even the rest of it? I think we are all forced onto the same agreement, as I called it earlier. The stage is set. Let's grab a few more. Chantel saying, I believe the past, future, and the present are all happening at the same time. I came to this conclusion when I was a child after many premonitions. I think you're on to something there. This is kind of the idea in some of the ideas in quantum physics. Could it be that all time could exist all at once? Certainly when we get messages from the spirit world, they describe time in the spirit world as being very, very different to what we understand it. We here live in a sort of linear time. Obviously, time for any of us that are interested in can we see the future raises huge questions about has time already happened, or do we have some control over it? I think we have certain amount. I think a potential exists. So time exists so that we can move towards potentials. I mean, it's huge questions, these things that would take multiple videos to chat about, even, let alone ever get to any answers on it. Do they have simulation machines on the other side to show off how different life paths would have played out? An interesting thought. I think when there's this other idea, which we could address another time, of the Akashic record, like the record of all things that have ever happened in existence. And perhaps there's an Akashic record that shows all that has happened. There may also be an Akashic record of a similar type that shows all things that could have happened. I'm sure that, in our imagination, we can think, if I'd taken that path, would I have made the same mistakes? The fact is, you took the path you took. That was your destiny. Ultimately, it couldn't have been any other way, I think. But we have this kind of illusion of free will, that we do have a certain amount of choice about what we do in life. Again, big questions. Interesting to raise the questions. I don't know if we could ever answer all these things. Are we truly awakened consciously? Everyone speaks of entering into the 5D consciousness. Well, I don't like these words like 5D consciousness and things. These, again, we get all these sort of new words for old ideas, but as if it's something new discovery. There is higher consciousness. There is... Well, I suppose, we've seen it throughout existence. There's throughout the history, we've got samadhi, you might call it, nirvana, you might call it, Christ consciousness is another word you might call it. There is the higher consciousness, the logos. There's higher consciousness, and that's what human life is partly about: to realize who we are, to realize what we are, to realize that this experience, human experience we're having, is just a small part of something huge, something vast, something eternal, something that goes on beyond death, and something that goes beyond, something that ultimately leads us to become godlike people, perhaps become God itself, that we realize that we are God experiencing his universe. But then as soon as I say that word God, we end up in this Father Christmas sort of world of a God, man God. We've got to think of it in terms of consciousness, of awakening. Anyway, I think I'm going to say bye to you now, because there's some lovely questions coming up. I can't catch them all now, but we'll do some more of these a little bit further down the line. I hope you've all been enjoying this. Let me just take that comment off a second. Sorry. Yeah, we'll do some more of this type of stuff later. I mean, I always like to plug something, but if you've been enjoying it, I started off talking about dreams, and I talked about and the NAADIs as well. The NAADIs you can get now on my website. Go and have a look at psychics.co.uk. It's in the description below. It will be in a minute when I review it. But also my book, Dream Meanings. I mean, you might enjoy this book. This is a compendium of all my dream books. I wrote 7 or more dream books in different languages. But but I talk about a lot of these ideas about what is reality, and they're actually from the standpoint of sleep and dreams, and can we enter other realities and dreams? That's all covered in there, as well as meanings of dreams and things. And again, like I say, I've got NAADI readings on my website now as too. I've teamed up with a team in Chennai, and I get a commission. So I get a commission, but I recommend them because I think they're very, very good. And people have been coming back very pleased. And while people are pleased, I still keep that there. And so go and have a look on my website, and don't forget to mention you saw it through my channel if you do book a reading, please. Anyway, we're about there. So thanks again for joining me. If you want to talk to me a bit more, I know a lot of you have been sending me emails and things. I appreciate that, but please try to do it through the Patreon site, because I can answer everybody through there, and send your thoughts and ideas through the Patreon site. Okay, thanks for joining me. See you soon. Bye for now. Whoops, wrong end. What are these? Hang on. Okay, I'll put that one up. Yeah, some of my previous predictions. See you soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now. If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, the Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism. And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. And funnily enough, actually, another royal prediction came true only yesterday, which surprised me really, because it was such a weird prediction I'd made. I predicted in my earlier videos from 2021 for 2022 that the king, I said Prince Charles at the time, because he wasn't actually king at that time, but I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today.